What's up, y'all? Coach Cam from the HTO crew back again. Going to bring you another ACC preview. This will be the efficient one. I'm going to do 4 teams. The last 2 I've only done 3. But I got a way to bring in NC State and North Carolina and do them both together, which makes sense to me since they're both in the same state. So today they'll be slightly briefer in terms of how much information I give off. But the crux of everything will still remain the same, and there's still going to be some good data. But the goal is to try and get these 4 done in around the same time as I got the other 3 done, if not faster. I'm trying to be a little bit more efficient with these, but also give you all the good data. So on the docket today, we've got Louisville, Miami, NC State, and North Carolina. 4 fairly intriguing programs. 3 for sure. One is kind of like NC State is a little bit of like a mid. But the other 3 are at least intriguing to talk about, and I think 2 of them, at the very least, are going to be very good. So we will start with Louisville. This has been one of my favorite teams kind of year in and year out. Definitely the case again this year as it was last year. We'll start at quarterback. They had Tyler Shove under center, and I thought he was really good for them. Not a flashy guy, but accurate passer, super poised. And I'm glad he got drafted. I hate the situation he got drafted into, but I think it could result in playing time, and I'm excited to see him and how he develops, even though he's an older rookie. I can't remember how old he is, but he's in his mid-20s. He's up there. But this year, Louisville brings in Miller Moss, who played for USC last season. He had some good moments, ultimately got benched, but I think it was a good learning opportunity for him. And I think he is one of those QBs that's moving into a better situation, and I believe we really see a good year out of him. We got a couple of freshmen for backups, so his leash is going to be incredibly long regardless. Even if he doesn't play well off the bat, he's probably got a pretty long leash to be able to establish himself. Definitely one of the strengths. I think as long as he stays healthy, I think it's one of the strengths of the team. Moving on to running back, this is the strength. I think this is the best part of their team, that or wide receiver. I'm going to go with running back. I think wide receiver is a little bit more touted, and I'll get to that in a minute, but I love the room this year. All 3 of their main guys that toted for him are back. Isaac Brown is going to be the RB1, and he will absolutely bring home hardware this year as long as he stays healthy. He was a true freshman last year, one of the best backs in the conference, and he's still young. He's going to have Duke Watson and Keyshawn Brown backing him up, both of whom were solid, just in more limited roles. This is going to be, I think this is their top unit and one of the top units in terms of running back rooms in the ACC. I would say a top 2, top 3. Wide receiver, last year they did a good job in the portal. They got Colin Lacey and Ja'Cory Brooks. Both of those guys played big roles until Lacey got hurt. Losing him sucked for them, but he's back this year. Ja'Cory's not, but Colin Lacey being back is he's a legitimate ACC wide receiver 1, and he can go and get it. Their tight end's gone to Mark Redmond, but they brought in Bobby Golden from Akron and Dakiri Collins from NC State and 5 others. So they've got their top end talent in Colin Lacey, 7 transfers coming in. So the depth should not be a question. That along with having a true wide receiver 1, I actually think this is a top 20 skill group in the nation. I think they did a really good job in the portal at receiver, and it'll show this year, especially with a solid quarterback coming in. And they just know how to run offense. They've got a good passing game coordinator. They do a good job on offense. They got into a shootout last year with Miami, and I actually think they have a better offense this year than they did last year. Go to the offensive line. So last year they hit kind of like a reload. They brought in 6 transfers who combined for 172 starts, and that group did a really good job. They only allowed 15 sacks all season. They lose 2 of their full-time starters, but they bring in 6 more guys who were full-time starters last year and combined for 203 starts. So 172 is a lot of combined starts, in terms of a history. 203 is crazy. Their O-line coaching is also some of the best year in, year out, regardless of personnel. So even though the group hasn't played together, the scheme is really good, and they've all played a lot of football, so they've got a lot of college experience. Very deep, very talented, top 20 unit again. This kind of rivals the wide receivers in terms of how good this unit is. All of this combined, I think this means Louisville will be one of the highest scoring teams in the ACC. Move on to the defense. This is kind of a hard group to rank because there's a ton of turnover. Aston Gelati was their dude, and he's gone along with two other starters and five backups. I know all their backups are gone. They bring in two part-time starters. They're returning two part-time starters, and they bring in six transfers to address the depth. But if I had to guess, I would say the unit takes a step back from last year without Gelati because they need like if one of those guys steps up and becomes what Gelati was, then okay, yeah, that they can kind of be what they were last year. But it's going to have to happen fairly quickly. They don't have the easiest schedule, and they're facing some good offenses. So someone would have to step up. Otherwise, I see this group kind of taking a step back. Go to linebackers. I actually didn't love this group going into the season. I think this is one of the groups that kind of performed beyond their projection last year. They bring back their number one tackler, TJ Quinn, and their number two tackler, Stanquan Clark. They have solid depth behind them with transfer from Tennessee, Caleb Perry, and then Antonio Watts. They both played fairly meaningful snaps last year. So they've got some experience coming in. And they're bringing in two of their best guys. I'm not like completely in love with the group still just because like personnel wise, it doesn't jump off the page, but it's guys that they know the system, they know the scheme. And I also think they're in the ACC and they are good enough to compete in the ACC. If not, they're not going to dominate the ACC, but they're easily good enough to compete in it. All right. Cornerback. This is probably the one area, maybe special teams too, but I'm not really going to talk about it. Secondary is kind of where I start to get a little fearful. They are losing all of their top guys, including, this is a big one, all ACC cornerback Quincy Riley. The only returner is a backup, D'Angelo Hutchinson. They bring in six transfers. JoJo Evans is one of them. He was first team all-conference USA, so we've got a guy that had some success at a mid-major level, so we can be pretty excited about him. I think if the transfers gel, then maybe they can be better than advertised, but I have this as by far the weakest unit on the team. I think Louisville probably struggles with allowing explosive this year, explosive plays. I think that this is going to be one of those years where they score a lot of points, and if they face a good passing offense, they give up a lot of points as well. I think they can do pretty good against the run, but teams that can sling it, I see them giving up some points. So it's just about them getting into shootouts and outscoring teams when they face teams like that. All right, so going to the schedule, I have this as the second most talented team in the ACC behind Clemson. I rank them ahead of Miami, ahead of Georgia Tech, ahead of SMU. They have a reasonably difficult schedule, and that's one of two things holding them back from winning the conference, that and the secondary. Non-conference looks great. Their hardest matchups like Kentucky at the end of the year, which isn't that bad, and they've had success against them in the past. Road games are where it's going to be tricky. They got SMU who on the road who will be coming off a bye. At Miami, who is coming off a bye, and at Pitt, who is coming off a bye. That's rough in terms of rest advantage and prep week. That's a tough. Like if you're gonna get those road games, like that's a tough way for it to go down. The other thing is their bye weeks are in like week 3 and week 7, meaning they're gonna play 7 straight weekends leading to the end of the regular season. I'm still super high on them in terms of talent. The over/under is at 8.5, which I think is probably perfect for them. I see 3 losses, and that will take them to 9-3 in the regular season. Not enough to win the conference, but enough to, it's a really good year, a pretty solid bowl game, and they'll compete. They'll be in it until the end. I just think that 7 games at the end it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for me to not see them lose one of those, but I think they'll at least win one of their road games against those 3 teams that I mentioned earlier. So they'll trade one for the other. I still see 3 losses. Let's go to Miami. I didn't have a picture I kind of ran short on time, so I didn't have a picture to share. But I do have one for Miami. Bam, Miami. There they go. They look good. Good looking unit right there. All right. So this was obviously This is one of the ones I hang my hat on for the most part because preseason last year, this was the team that I nailed. Like 4/5 of the way into the year, like I had it. I had them at the top of the ACC. They were the cream of the crops for 3/4 of the season, like 4/5 of the season for real. Losses to Georgia Tech, and then a horrible upset loss to Syracuse is kind of what did them in. But before that, they were the team to beat. Another prop to myself. I predicted the Georgia Tech win. I did not predict the Syracuse win. That was I did not see that coming. So that was kind of the thing that screwed them. All right, so going into this year, I absolutely see them taking a step back or two, starting at quarterback. Cam Ward's a pro now. Carson Beck foregoed the draft so he could get one more crack at raising his draft stock. I personally, as a Georgia boy, am not super high on Carson Beck, but it needs to be stated, he's going from Georgia, like in an SEC conference schedule, to playing in the ACC, and there's nothing to suggest that he won't have one of the better seasons from a quarterback position in the conference. It's just not as good competition. I mean, it's just as simple as that. He will have an easier time being successful in terms of processing and time. Overall, I think it's a step back from last year because Cam Ward, I think, just the way he creates, I think he's just more talented than Carson Beck, but it's not the biggest one. It's not where the biggest problems are going to be. I think Carson Beck will be more than serviceable at the position. We'll move over to running back. They didn't really strike fear into me last year. They had a solid line, so that's kind of where the success was. Damian Martinez was the guy last year. He's gone. But they bring in their number 2, Fletcher. He got some pretty notable carries. He did a fairly good job. They bring in Sharmar Brown from North Dakota State. He's a 1,000-yard guy, and I think the group is solid. They're going to be like they were last year. They've got a solid guy, solid depth, nothing like groundbreaking, but enough to keep a defense honest in what should be a pass-heavy operation. Wide receiver, this is it. This is where I think the problem is going to be. The other thing that kind of sucks is Carson Beck, last year, his weapons were horrible. He had awful receivers that just did not help him at all. I think he deals with the same exact thing this year, just in a different uniform. They're losing Restrepo, who's a record breaker, along with Elijah Arroyo, I thought he was one of my favorite tight ends in the ACC. He's gone. Jacoby George, he's the number 2. He's gone. Sam Brown and Isaiah Horton, who really came on strong at the end of last year, they're all gone. They bring in CJ Daniels from Liberty, but they lost their top 5 receivers. They're not, and that's it. They did not address the need. I'll be honest, just looking at what they did in the portal, they didn't address the need. I think they take a massive step back in terms of receiver production. I will be shocked if they don't. Offensive line, this is one area where they will still be strong. They normally are. Mario Cristobal is an O-line guy. He's kind of got that thing mastered at the college level. They were elite last year, mostly because of him. They lose Zach Carpenter at center, which is big. He had a lot of good starts for them. But they add James Brockenmeyer from TCU, and the rest are returning. Everyone else is coming back. So for the most part, continuity is there, and the coaching is there. They're going to be good. That's a top 10 unit. Definitely near the top in the ACC. Defensive line. So yeah, let's move to the defensive side of the ball. Overall, offensively, I think the main issue is going to be at receiver. Last year, the run game didn't really dominate, and it didn't need to. This year, the run game would have to dominate more because I just don't think I don't think Carson Beck's going to get the receivers to separate. I think he's going to get plenty of protection and plenty of time to process, but I worry about the receivers being able to separate. Defense. All right, so start at the defensive line. Despite the defensive issues Miami had last year, if you remember, they were pretty bad defensively. It was shootout city every time they played. One thing they did well was win in the trenches. O-line and D-line generally are pretty good. They were really good for them last year. The D-line was great. They lose Simeon Barrow and Tyler Barron, but Ruben Bain's coming back, and he's going to be healthy along with Messidor. They add David Blay from Louisiana Tech. For depth, they are going to be just as dangerous as this position group was last year, and they were pretty good. I think they're going to be good again. Also, it needs to be known, they got a new DC coming in, so it's going to be a new scheme. Cristobal is he was not happy with the way the defense was structured last year. I think even if the personnel stays relatively similar, I think they're going to be better because they're going to have a new scheme and a new DC that's really focused on some of the things that they were bad at. Pressure rate was pretty solid, but not a lot of takeaways, a lot of explosives. I think it's going to be a little bit more like we're getting after it. A lot more ball hawking guys. Go to linebacker. This is where most. This is not where most of the problems were, but this group wasn't good. Most of the problems are coming up. The DBs were awful to watch, but linebackers weren't great either. They did okay, not allowing yards per play. Their issue was explosives. So like they would get a 3rd and long, and then they would give up 18. They'd get themselves into good situations, but give up the big one. So like yards per play really wasn't that bad. It's just the explosives. They led the ACC in explosives allowed. They're going to lose Maui Goa this year, who was the leading tackler, and Jaden Harris, who was like their 3rd best tackler, maybe. They bring back Wesley Bisanthi, sorry. He's probably going to lead the defense this year. They're bringing in Charles Brantley. He's got 23 career starts, and Mohamed Touri from Rutgers. So overall, the depth is better. They lose their top guy and their number 3 guy, but losing their top guy is like, he was their top guy by a long shot. So losing him is going to be tough. But I like what they added from a depth perspective, and I don't know if they improve. Maybe they do. They're not the issue. They're not the issue. I can tell you that. The issue was defensive back. So this was one of the worst groups in all of football to watch. They were banged up, which was kind of a large percentage of the problem. Their best player probably ended up being like OJ Frederique, who was a true freshman, which that kind of tells you everything you need to know from like a top 10 program. They lose 2 of their starters, but they add 6 transfers. Like this was an area where they were like, we need to address this need. We have to be better at this year. So they brought in 6 transfers. The depth is going to be way better. So even if they have the injury bug, the depth is hopefully going to help them kind of nullify that a little bit. And the new DC is going to have a new system. I don't think they have a choice but to be somewhat better, even if they don't light the world on fire. I think overall, Miami's offense takes a step back, but their defense takes a step up, and they end up roughly in a similar position to what they were last year. Just a different brand of team. Kind of a different identity, but I think they got better in the right areas defensively, and I see them making some progress there. The schedule. So again, it's like the offense, are they going to be as good? No. It's like impossible for that to even happen. They were like record breaking. I think they're going to win a similar amount of games. I think they did a good job in the portal, especially addressing the stuff they were bad at last year. The problem that I see is the schedule. It's not as friendly. Top 30 most difficult schedule. It includes Notre Dame to open the season. Like that's not great. That's a tough one. I guess a real like litmus test to see kind of where they stack up. But Notre Dame to open the season with a new defensive identity, like a new scheme. I don't know if you break that in. Like, do they see success week 1? That's tough to do, especially against a top 10 team, which we know Notre Dame is going to be. So I see some growing pains for sure. They get Florida, which is a tough non-conference game. I think Florida's nasty, so that's going to be a tough game for them. And then a road matchup versus SMU. The rest looks winnable, although they are known to not finish season strong. And back-to-back road games versus Virginia Tech and Pitt scream upset in at least one of them. So you've got those 3 that at the top that I kind of see them struggling in, and I would put money on it that they lose at least one of those last 2 games. I think back-to-back road trips to end the season is tough, and they've kind of shown their identity is to flunk out at the end of the season anyways. Call me crazy. I think they win 8 games. Their over-under is 9.5. I think they win 8, and they miss the ACC title game by a decent margin. The schedule is just not going to allow them to be one of the upper echelon teams. 8 wins sounds about right to me. Moving on to NC State, I'm going to try and like blitz through this one. They're not like super exciting, so you're not going to be missing much, and you're going to get kind of where I think they're going to go anyways. This is like the most mid team last year. I think to me, they really underperformed what I was hoping they would be last year. So start at quarterback. Grayson McCall was the guy. He took the worst hit I have ever seen in my life. Missed the rest of the year. True freshman CJ Bailey stepped in, and for the most part, I thought he looked the part. The word around the street is he has gained some good weight and should take a step forward this year, be one of the better QBs in the conference. I have him as kind of like a sleeper to make the biggest leap forward of the QBs, along with Holstein from Pitt. I'm really high on CJ Bailey. I think he does a good job this year. Running back Hollywood Smothers came on pretty strong towards the end of last year, and I think he has got a lot of potential as the RB1. So I think the running back, hold on, let me make this change real quick so you guys know where I'm at. I want to make sure. This one I did have a picture for as well. There's NC State. So there you go. There's where we are now. I don't mind the room. I like Smothers. I thought he was good. They are going to lose Kendrick Raphael and Jordan Waters. But the freshman coming in, DeAndre Desanor, might make some noises added depth. I don't think I like him quite as much as I did last year, but I do like Smothers. He's kind of like the X factor to me. If he's healthy, the run game is going to be impressive. I just don't know if the depth behind him is really good enough. I think they took a step back there. They had more depth last year, I think. Like Smothers wasn't the starter, and he ended up being, looking like an RB1. But they had some guys that were really good before him. If he's the RB1, I don't like the depth as much behind him. Wide receiver. At first glance, you're going to be like, they're taking a big step back because Casey Concepcion's going to Texas A&M. But I watched all of their games, and he did not impress me a single time. Maybe it was the scheme. Maybe it was the offense. I don't think they lost anything by having him leave. I'll be honest with you. I actually think they're going to improve, even though he's gone. Maybe because he's gone. I don't know. Noah Rogers and Wesley Grimes both come back. Joy at tight end is a lot of fun to watch. That's a lot of experience that's coming back. So this group should be better than last year, despite Concepcion leaving. Because everyone else is returning. I think they should be fine, especially if CJ Bailey takes a step forward. Offensive line, these guys underperformed last year. 3 of the starters are gone. They brought in 2 transfers, one from Wake Forest and the other from Utah State. Both of them have starting experience, and everyone else is back. So, which is good for the most part, because they rotated in and out a decent amount. They had like a pretty, they had some injury bug going around, so they did a lot of rotating. So a lot of guys got some looks. Dave Doran, the head coach, if you're not familiar, he thinks this is the most depth he has had in years at offensive line. That's a quote from Dave Doran. I don't think they're going to light the world on fire, but this should be like a stable group that doesn't cause issues. And a lot of times, if your offensive line, if you don't know the names of anyone on the offensive line, a lot of times that's a good thing. It's like umpires in baseball. Like if you don't know their name, they probably did a good job. And that's kind of where offensive line is. And I think that's what you're going to see out of this group. I think they just do a solid job. So move to the defensive side of the ball. These guys went through some growing pains last year, stopping the run. They lost 3 of their guys, so it was going to be kind of a rebuilding year. That was like the previous year going into last year. This year they lose 1 starter, but everyone else comes back. So I think they kind of went through the gauntlet last year, and I think those guys came out stronger because of it. Losing 1 guy is obviously, that's notable, but everyone else being back, you kind of keep that continuity. I think the experience is going to help them take a small step forward in terms of productiveness this coming year. Linebacker, this is the one to me that was the most interesting, just because there's so much turnover. Devon Betty, Kamal Bonner, Tamarcus Cooley, all of those are gone. They're starters. But they bring back the number 1 tackler, Sean Brown. He's nasty, by the way. Sean Brown's really good. And they're bringing in 2 transfers with a lot of experience, a lot of starting experience. If this group gels, I think they're better than last year's group. But it is tough to know for sure with that many transfers how they're going to fit into the scheme. So that's kind of where the question mark is. I'm leaning towards maybe they don't get better, but I don't think they get worse either. I think it's a group that does an okay job. I think they do fine, especially for the ACC. Defensive back, this might be where it gets rough. They were not great last year, as it was. They lost all 4 of their starters after last year. They brought in 3 transfers, which is like, oh, great. So it's new faces, hopefully inject some life. The transfers are from Georgia State, Temple, and North Texas. None of them really address what they lost. This unit will not have enough depth, not enough talent. The opposing pass games are going to go crazy on this unit, especially even if they got like a halfway competent quarterback, they're going to get thrown on. So NC State, if they're facing a run-heavy offense, they're going to be fine. If they face a pass-heavy offense, they're going to have to score or they're going to lose the game. I think they can score, though. I think the offense plays up this year compared to what it did last year. So I think you see a step in the right direction from them there. Schedule, all right. Overall, like I said, they should compete offensively. They should do a good job at stopping the run. They're going to suck at defending the pass. Basically, that makes them your standard ACC team, which puts them squarely in the middle of most people's projections. And Vegas agreed, as their projected over-under is at 6.5, like right in line with a bowl game, but not lighting the world on fire. I initially had them somewhere around that. Then I saw this one thing like, okay, so Dave Doran has this ability to like really get his guys to buy in when no one believes in them. They're coming off a 6-win season last year, like a super disappointing 6-win season. They had higher projections last year than they do this year. The last 2 times that they've had like a 6 or less wins, the next year they won 8 games. I don't know if they win 8. I don't know if they get to 8. But I see 7 for sure winnable games. Notre Dame at Miami and at Pittsburgh are not going to be easy, but home games against Georgia Tech, Florida State, North Carolina are all winnable, and they miss SMU, Clemson, and Louisville. So it's a very doable schedule. I think they exceed the expectations and get at least 7 wins, so I'd have them on the over. All right, last one, and there's only one picture that could do this team justice. Let me go. This is North Carolina, y'all. And we need to get our boy Bill up on the screen. Hey there, Bill. Looking good. Looking good as ever. All right, North Carolina. I think like off rip, this is one of the hardest teams to predict because there's so much turnover in terms of personnel, and then obviously the Belichick scenario. Like you kind of have an idea of what you think it'll be because of his track record. I just don't know what it looks like at the college level. I know what it looks like at the pro level. I just don't know. But I'm going to go through. We'll go through, stage by stage, and we'll see where we end up at the end. We'll start at QB. So Max Johnson's coming back. He was a starter at the beginning of last year, but he got hurt in the first game and missed the rest of the year. He broke his femur, which is very hard to break, but he pulled it off. Missed the whole year. You don't know what recovery looked like. Time's going to tell to see kind of how he fares. He's going to have a long leash, though, because both the backups left in the portal, Chris Well and Connor Harrell. Gio Lopez transfers in from South Alabama, and they also have a true freshman, Bryce Baker, who they do have a lot of hype on. I don't know if he shows up this year, though. I don't see a lot out of this group. I'm worried about Max Johnson and what that recovery looks like, so we'll see. Running back, this is where they're going to take the biggest step back. Not having Omarion Hampton, who was the second best running back in the league last year, and basically was the entire engine of the Tar Heels offense. So he's gone. Davian Gauss is probably going to take over lead back duties. He'll be there with Caleb Hood and Benjamin Hall. It has no choice but to be a massive step back. It's not better in terms of depth. It's not better in terms of high-end talent. The running game is simply just not going to be as good because Omarion Hampton made that offense what it was last year. He's the reason they scored as many points as they did. That's sole reason. Wide receiver. So there's a ton of turnover with this group, but they weren't very good last year. The quarterback play wasn't great either, so it didn't do them any favors, but they weren't very good. I don't think there's going to be much of a drop-off because they weren't very good. I also don't think they get much better. They got 5. Everyone's leaving. 5 transfers coming in. I saw the names. None of them really jump off. Normally I have like a name or two to give you to like watch out for. None of them really jumped off the page, and I was kind of like, oh, this is the group. With what I have seen so far, I haven't looked at every team. This is the worst receiving group in the conference, bar none. There's other teams to look at, like we get to Wake Forest and maybe my mind changes. We get to Stanford, maybe my mind changes. But for right now, this is the worst group that I have covered in terms of wide receiver play. So far, I think the skill position as a whole is one of the weakest that I've seen in the ACC. Offensive line, one of the areas of strength for this team. So I don't know who we're protecting, but we'll be protecting them well. They're going to lose Willie Lampkin. That's an all-ACC guy, and Howard Sampson, but everyone else is coming back, and they're bringing in 6 transfers, all with starting experience. The only reason they're not going to be as good as they were last year, or like match numbers at least, is because the running backs are worse and the receivers are worse and the passing game is going to be worse. But the line is 100% not going to be the problem. They will do a good job in the trenches. This is where it gets interesting. We start talking about the defense. Start at defensive line. There's a ton of turnover. You'll hear this a lot, especially with the defense. You got to understand this is Belichick, and Belichick's a defense guy, so he'll work the portal. He'll get some guys out. He'll bring some guys in until he gets the personnel that he wants. If I'm anyone, I'm trusting that. If nothing else, the defense is going to be competitive. There's a reason he brought these people in. There's a reason they're going to play. If they buy into his system, the defense is probably going to be competitive, not from a personnel standpoint, but from a scheme standpoint, and because he's a mastermind. So defensive line, there's a ton of turnover. And again, the only thing, if it was any other coach, I'd be like, they're going to take a step back. They're going to be bad. But because this is Belichick's thing, and he brought in 5 transfers to replace him, I think there's a reason he picked those 5 guys. And so at the end of the day, it'll take a defensive wizard to make this defensive line good. Bill Belichick happens to be a defensive wizard. So I'm kind of leaving it. Is the personnel good? No, they don't match up. It's a lower end personnel, but Bill's kind of an equalizer. So I think they might be competitive, until we see differently. I trust Bill more than I know these players. The names don't stick out. Linebacker, this team, they didn't have a lot of depth last year and had a lot of problems defensively. If you remember, there was a game where they gave up like 60-something points to Coastal Carolina or whoever it was. This year, they're going to lose Power Echols. He was by far their best defensive player. Amari Campbell is gone too. He was their second best player, by far their second best player. But they bring in 6 transfers, including Mekhi Gaber, who was a starter for Nebraska. So they got a guy with some experience too. I think they have a chance to improve. They were bad last year. If they're bringing in 6 guys and they've got Bill, and they were bad, I think it's one of those scenarios where they probably get better. So I think they take a step forward. I think the line probably stays roughly the same, maybe a little step back, but the linebacker core gets better. Go to DB. This group was terrible last year. They lose their best corner, Elijah Huzzy, and Antavius Lane, as well as starting safety Jakeem Harris. So they're losing 3 key guys, but they had 4 transfers. And their nickelback comes back. Caleb Kost comes back. They're losing 3 guys, but they were bad, and they're bringing in a lot of transfers. Probably Bill's idea. Again, same with the linebackers. If they were bad and they're bringing in new guys and it's Bill, they probably cannot be worse. They probably take a small step forward and become more of a competent defense. Schedule. This is where it gets interesting. I'm not in love with this team. Offensively, I don't think they're good. Defensively, I think Bill would be the only reason they would be good. I still see some growing pains, but the schedule is super, super forgiving. I don't think the personnel is good. Bill knows his defense. If anyone's going to improve a defense that was bad a year ago, it would be Bill. Also, on the plus side, they're going to have one of the easiest schedules in the conference. They avoid Miami. They avoid SMU. They avoid Louisville. They get Clemson at home, and they're off a bye. So they're going to be rested when they face Clemson. Everything else is super manageable. If not, they've got a stretch where it's like Wake Forest, Virginia, non-conference, weak non-conference, Duke, and they've got it's a very winnable stretch towards the end of the season. They can legitimately win 9 games because it's probably the easiest or second easiest schedule in the ACC. For that reason alone, they can win 9 games, especially if Bill gets the defense right. They're facing some bad offenses that I think they can take advantage of. So if they execute that and they win the games they're supposed to win, there's 9 that they could win, legitimately. The over-under is at 7.5. They got a shot at 9 because of the schedule, so I'm going to split the difference. I'm going to say 8, which will easily be an improvement over what their record was last year. Those are the teams for today. 2 more weeks of this, I think. So 3 teams to cover next week, 3 teams to cover the week after. Make sure you're checking out Will's videos too. He did some ACC QB power rankings, which I love. I love that stuff. He did a great job with it. I agree with most of what he had to say. definitely take a look at that if you haven't yet. As always, I appreciate you guys for listening. 3 more teams next week. I will see you guys next time. Later.